Hi, and welcome to another episode of A Walk to Remember. My name is Dwayne Baker-Henderson, and as always, I'll be your host as we explore some of the truths and the myths surrounding postpartum depression, and hopefully give you some tips to make your journey through postpartum depression a little bit easier, or helping someone else through it a little bit easier. Now, today I want to talk about the power of personal development. That is something that I was introduced to prior to my wife coming down with postpartum depression, and it helped me a tremendous amount. I've talked about this before to a smaller extent, but I want to talk about how studying personal development and personal growth actually helped me get through that experience, and also help my wife to get through it and get better. Prior to having our daughter Kalina, my wife and I had been part of a group that had studied leadership, that had studied growing as a person and what that could actually do for you on a large scale in your life. And the things that we learned really helped us power through what was happening when Corey had postpartum depression. Now, we were introduced to books and audios, and we went to a whole bunch of seminars and workshops surrounding personal growth, where we learned about how to change your perspective on what's happening to you and with you. That was the biggest thing. It's just changing the paradigm that you work through your life with. And the first book that introduced us to the fact that you can actually change the way you're thinking about what's happening to you, and by default that changes what is happening to you. The first book that we read was one called The Slight Edge, and unfortunately I don't have a copy of it, so I'll put a picture of it up here. And it is a book by a gentleman named Jeff Olson, and basically is a series of exercises that helps you to identify small things that you can do in your life, tiny little things that you can do every single day to change the way your life is going, and introduces you to the first kind of concepts of perception about things that are happening with you. And I highly encourage reading it. I've given it to other people as well, and it had a very profound impact on their life. So that is the first thing that I would encourage you to take a look at. Another simple little book that we were introduced to, and again, I don't have a copy of it because I've given away all of the copies we've had. We've bought probably 20 of them. Is called The Ant and the Elephant. It's by a gentleman named Vince Pacente, and it's a little story about an ant and how he finds himself going down one path and realizes at some point that he can actually change the path that he's on, and do it through the way he's thinking, and it's a very sweet little story. It's a small little book, and it's written as a story, kind of like a children's story, but it has a very powerful message in it. So all these books I will put a link to in the description below, but I encourage you to pick and choose from them and find something in this list that does speak to you and you think might help you, because really changing the way you're looking at your current situation, whether you're experiencing postpartum depression directly or you're helping somebody else through it, being able to change those perceptions about, well, what is really happening can be very powerful. Another book that I read, and I just took this off my dad's bookshelf actually, is Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a very tragic story, but a very hopeful story as well. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist that was put into one of the concentration camps during World War II. And instead of becoming a victim of that situation, he decided to change the way he was thinking about his situation as a prisoner of one of these camps, and knowing that most people that went through these camps ended up dying, and it was a really terrible situation. He lost so much in his experience there, but he decided that he needed to tell his story, and that's really what pulled him through that situation. And for me, finding this book on my dad's shelf was so powerful for me, because at the time I was kind of feeling a victim of the situation that I was in. Seeing my wife suffering so much and not being able to really do a whole lot to help her, and kind of feeling like a victim of that. Reading this book really changed my perception of what was going on with me. So highly recommend this book, and again, I'll put a link in the description below. Another wonderful book, and this is a very old copy of this book, is The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. This is an old book. It was written in the 50s, I believe, and it is basically about your attitude about what's happening with you and seeing things a little bit differently, and picturing better things for you. And it was very powerful for both Corey and I in reshaping where we saw our lives going, even though we were in the middle of uncertainty and fear, and all of these weird things were happening that we'd never experienced before. And The Magic of Thinking Big is one of the pivotal books that we both read that really reshaped our perception of where we were going and how we could get there. So very highly encourage you to read this book if you read nothing else on this list. This was a huge one for both of us, and really changed the way that I was thinking about the course that we were going, and how we could change that to what we actually wanted from what was happening. So great book. I've talked about this book before, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. This was a big one for me specifically because up until the point that I read this book, I didn't really understand why Corey did the things that she did that drove me so crazy. And what it turns out is that she's not the same person as me. And up until that point, I didn't really realize that, people were that different. And this book talks about the 5 ways that people will feel loved. And the reason this was so important for me is because I'd been speaking to Corey in my own love language. And she didn't hear it because that wasn't her love language. I might as well have been speaking Chinese or Dutch or something to her. She wouldn't have understood. And so once I read this, I started to understand how she needed me to talk to her so that she would feel loved and encouraged. So another great book if you're supporting someone or you're in a relationship with someone who is going through postpartum depression. Highly recommended. There were also times when I didn't feel very abundant about things because of the situation we were in. I had actually stopped doing a lot of the work that I had been doing. I was self-employed and had 2 businesses at the time. And because I kind of pushed that aside to help Corey out as much as I could, our finances started to struggle, I guess. And I was having a lot of challenges with feeling abundant. And so this book, which is another really old book, Acres of Diamonds by Russell Conwell, was a really good book as well. It's, again, written as kind of a parable about a man who goes on a journey looking for riches only to find out that they're already there all around him. And I read this book not really frequently, but I do read it over and over again to just remind myself that there are things that I need to be grateful for right where I am, and that I do have abundance of some great things in my life. So again, another fantastic book that I think everybody should read. And I do have a lot of books here around me. I'm not going to go through all of them. But I'll tell you about some of the most impactful ones. This is another fantastic book that was introduced to me by some business partners. It's called Personality Plus, How to Understand Others by Understanding Yourself. And it's by Florence Littauer. This book I read before the 5 Love Languages, and it really started me on the path of wanting to understand Corey a little bit more. And it really helped me to understand me, why I have the little idiosyncrasies that I have that drive Corey crazy. Things like, and I don't know why I would share this with you, but if things aren't in the correct order in the cutlery drawer, it makes me crazy. So I was kind of staggered when I read this book to find out why that is, and why it didn't matter so much to Corey and things like that. So really, really good book if you have to deal with people in your life, which all of us do. And all of these books really grew me in a lot of different ways. I have another book that my dad gave me, and this he gave me a long, long time ago, on my 26th birthday, I think it was. And it's a sweet little book about how you progress through life by taking small steps at first, and then you get bigger and bigger steps as you go to learn as you go along the way. It's a very, very sweet little book. I'll see if I can actually get it so it shows up. It's called First You Have to Row Little Boat, and it's by Richard Bode, or Bode. The tagline is Reflections on Life and Living. And my dad is a big sailor. He really likes to sail his boat and finds a lot of peace in that. And this really appealed to him, so he thought he'd pass it along. And it's a great book for anybody, even if you're not a sailor, to change the perception of, the steps along the course of your life, and how by gathering wisdom along the way, each step feels a little bit safer as you go. And I have a couple more books I want to talk about. This is a very well-worn copy of John Maxwell's book, The Difference Maker. There was a book that came out, I believe it was in the 80s, called Attitude is Everything. This is John Maxwell's kind of rebuttal to that book, or add-on to that book, where he talks about your attitude might not be everything. It might not change everything in your life, but it can actually make the difference between a positive and a negative outcome to a situation. And I have read this book several times, as you can tell by the cover. And I have tons and tons of notes in it, and lots of the pages are folded over, and lots of notes in the back about the wisdom that's in this book. John Maxwell is my favorite author, and this is my favorite of his books. Fantastic book if you want to change your attitude about what's going on in your current journey, your current experience, especially when you're going through something as traumatic as postpartum depression. So highly recommend you read that. And again, don't try and read all of these all at once. If you find something in this list that appeals to you, definitely read it. There are 4 other little books by John Maxwell that come in a series. One is on leadership. One is on equipping people if you're part of a team, or you're part of a family and you want to equip people to do the best that they possibly can. Fantastic book about relationships, which if you are helping somebody with postpartum depression, obviously there's relationships involved. Some really, really simple, great advice on how to do that. And it's just a tiny little book. There's not much to it. And then another book on attitude, and just changing the way you look at what's going on with you, with the people around you, how your attitudes affect your performance and your outcomes and all that kind of stuff. I have tons and tons of other books that I'd love to share with you, but I just really wanted to talk about personal development and growing yourself as a person, and really what that can do for you. And reading all of these books, and I've read dozens and dozens and dozens of other books about growing myself and changing my attitudes and shifting my paradigms. And what that really did for me is to cement my understanding of who I was and where I fit into the world. And when you're going through something that kind of tears your world apart, like postpartum depression, you can lose yourself in that situation. And by going through all these books and reading and growing and becoming more as I was going through that situation, it really kept me grounded, and it made me feel powerful when I was feeling weak. And so that's why I encourage people all the time to grow and to continue learning and change the way you think about what's happening in your life and take control over what you're thinking and how you're thinking. And all of these books really did that for me. And There's a couple more that I would mention that I don't have. One called 5 Wishes by Baker-Henderson, I believe his name was. And that book, it's basically all about, one life-changing thing that happened to Baker-Henderson and how it changed everything after that by changing the way he was thinking. And it's another very, very powerful book. I wish I had a copy of it that I could just give to everybody. But unfortunately, I don't. But I'll put links, like I said, to all of these books that I've mentioned in the description below. Pick something in there that appeals to you, whether it's something that's short, something that's big, that can be completely life-changing, just to help you stay grounded and feel like you do have some control over what you're thinking and the way you're thinking. I'll mention this book too. This was a tough book for me to read. By Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is my very favorite book that I've ever read. It took me months to read it because it's got so much stuff in it, and it really, really affected me at a core level to read this book. It's a tougher one to read than all the other ones on this list. So if you want a challenge, that's a good one. But really, when it comes down to it, what I encourage you to do in this episode is just take a step towards growing and learning something new every single day. And by reading a book that can really help you. And it's something you can do 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. When you're by yourself, you can take a book with you. It's a really nice way to kind of separate yourself from what's going on in your life for just a little while and to learn something at the same time. And so I encourage you to do that and just ground yourself through growth and developing yourself. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Excuse me. If you did like the video, please leave a like. Find these books. I'll link to them on Amazon. Find something that that appeals to you and read it. Leave a like if you like the video. Give me your comments if there's some books that you have read or speakers that you've listened to that have made a big impact on you and really helped you feel grounded and stronger. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear what's coming up next. I do try and put out 2 videos every week. And I want to thank you for watching the videos as well. So thank you again, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.